Hello guys and welcome to another video. Today I have here a gearbox that is, well, garbage. But why is that? These gearboxes are not that bad. Well, they are one of the best gearboxes ever made, maybe for many makes and models. This is a very high quality gearbox. But why did that happen? You saw that on the thumbnail and I'll show you in a minute that the clutch assembly completely destroyed the gearbox. Well, I have a theory again. Okay, you already saw me do here a removal of a gearbox. If you do not, it is down on the description. And you know that when you are removing the gearbox of these cars, you have to slide out this, this bearing here slides out and stays with the pressure plate. Very nice, okay? And I was really having a very hard time trying to remove this gearbox. In fact, I had to add up there a hole to be able to press a driver to take out here the bolts for the pressure plate. In that way, removing here the gearbox. To my amazement, I saw over here a, not a scratch, but 4 millimeters or almost 5 millimeters, that is half a centimeter of material gone. That being said, this gearbox over here is still very good. Only the flange over here is completely destroyed. That's why this bearing does not slide all the way out, and that is why I was having such a hard time removing this gearbox. But let's get to it. Okay, so what happened with this, I think, was... Look at this flywheel. This is not common at all to happen on Fiat cars with a Valeo. This is really not normal to happen on this brand. This is Valeo original one, okay? And as you can see over here, the pressure plate completely destroyed the gearbox. Obviously, this is not made in one day or 1 week or 1 month even. This is really completely, well, get the drift, okay? Now, what happens is, you already saw me and heard me talk about the smooth shut off of this engine. All of multi-jet engines and most of JTDs, only the 105 horsepower over there, the 4-cylinder one, does not have it, but afterwards all of them have it. Every time you shut off the engine, this little thing over here shuts off the air, and in that way the engine shuts off smoothly, saving the flywheel. Okay, now after assembling everything over here, I noticed that when I shut off the engine, this does not work, but also the geometry of the turbo, the VGT, also does not work. So I clearly have a problem with vacuums. And yes, on this video I will diagnose why that flywheel failed. This is really not common. Another thing that I saw happening was, well, this gearbox here is used, as you can imagine, and also the flywheel and the clutch kit combination also is used, but it is in very good condition. But the flywheel that I put in is also starting to develop a slight play. And what I've noticed on the other engine that I took that parts from, they disconnected this pin over here. Maybe for something that I don't know why. Some people think that disconnecting this will get you more power on the car, but if you want to, you can also test your intake valve by hand. And clearly see the difference on the sound of the engine when it's shutting off. It's much more smoother. This is really not fair. Every time I want to record something, it is really windy. Well, I have here a chart for the vacuum line controls of these cars and most cars out there, okay? So first things first, I want to start here by the vacuum pump. The vacuum pump provides since idle until red line, okay, constant 0.9 bar of vacuum, okay. Notice over here the minus. So you have here the main line that goes to the brake booster, and you have on the brake booster again 0.9 negative bar. You may have over here near the brake booster a check valve. That check valve may be on somewhere along the line, does not matter, okay? That is for safety of the brake booster. No matter if you have or not the check valve, it should not be in the way of the deviation that we have over here to do other functions with the vacuum. So along the line of the main line, the thick line of the brake booster, you may have here a deviation, normally you do, for a vacuum reservoir. Some cars do not have them, some 159s do not have them, and you just have a straight line going all the way through, okay? But most cars have them, so let's include over here that vacuum reservoir, okay? It's easier, I promise you. So you have on the entry of the vacuum reservoir 0.9 negative, on the exit 0.9 negative. On most vacuum reservoirs, you have a check valve on the inside of the vacuum reservoir, okay? Like over here. That is very important because when you want to shut off the engine, you do not have, when the engine shuts down, you do not have any vacuum over here, okay? But you have a reservoir full with vacuum that helps you out with the intake valve and also over there with the turbo. But let's get to it in a minute, okay? Once again, I already showed you most of this stuff on the channel, but not in this format. So over here on the 147, 156 and GT, we have this exact diagram. On the 159, we only have this part for the turbo because the intake valve is electronic. So on the 159, it just goes like this, okay? But let's deal with the case that we are dealing with today, which is a troubleshoot. And we do not have the variable geometry actuator doing this thing, and we do not have the intake valve actuating. So if both of these functions are not working, it may mean that you may have a brake over here, you may have a brake over here, or a brake over here. It's much easier to think like this, and in this way, I will start my diagnosis over here. That is my assumption on this car, my assumption. If I have only a problem on the intake valve, I will do a test over here and a test over here. Because if my geometry turbo is working, no need to check this part over here, okay? At least on the first glance. But on our case, we have a non-functioning of both of these systems. Now, to better understand a little bit more, once we are going here to do the troubleshooting on the car, if we have a problem over here, as soon as we discover the problem that may be on this area over here, where you have the 0.9, once you have the deviation, and once again this deviation over here may come from the vacuum reservoir, so you may have something like this. Okay, you may have something like this with 0.9 over here and 0.9 over here. These are the solenoids to control the actuators. This is the intake valve actuator. This is the VGT actuator. But once again, if you do not have both of these systems, I highly doubt that we have a problem on this area, more like on this reservoir or over there, okay? Once again, having over here 0.9, if we find the problem over there, if, for example, now the turbo works, but the intake valve does not, we must have over here the 0.9 at the entry of the solenoid, and on the exit, we must have 0 to minus 0.6 on the turbo on idle, okay? And here on the intake valve, you should have at all times 0.9 negative, and when you shut off the engine during the shut off, that 1-2 seconds of the shut off of the engine, you should have the maximum pressure of vacuum actuating over the intake valve. As you do not have the RPM of the engine at this stage, it relies on the vacuum reservoir to do it for you, for the pump, okay? And it will use the vacuum reservoir to do that function. Normally what happens, a lot of times what happens is really this. You have your geometry working, but your smooth shutoff does not, and that means that maybe you have a problem. Normally this line here is totaled. Normally this line here also, because of the oil contamination, goes over there. Most of the times what happens is multiple malfunctions on these cars, and on this troubleshooting I will keep in mind that this may not be the only problem, but it is certainly the first stage of my troubleshooting. If both are not working, I have to start from the beginning. I know that I have brake boost, so I know that I have a good vacuum pump, but I will test the vacuum pump and the brake booster and the check valve all in one go by testing here this deviation. If I have 0.9 on this deviation over here, on this spot, I know that I have good pump, good check valve, good brake booster, and a good, that little T over there, it is also good. Normally it clogs up, okay? Next I will see this line over here, and on this entry I will test again for 0.9, on the exit again, or exits again for 0.9. Somewhere along the line I surely will find the problem. You can use a vacuum gun or you can use just a vacuum gauge. I have, again, because with this I can do the checking and also other stuff. So I want to confirm that my gauge is working correctly. My gauge and my gun, so that I do not have false readings. Okay, so this is the vacuum pump. This is the main line, very thick one, of the vacuum pump, and it goes right there on the bottom to the brake servo. And here you have this little T-shaped accessory that steals the vacuum to your reservoir. This is the main one, and this is the place that I will start to do my troubleshooting, diagnosis, whatever you want to call it. Do not forget that we have to test also the lines, because they may be clogged or ruptured or something else, okay? I always like to start my testing where the vacuum comes from. So removing this over here, I will test this supply of vacuum, not test this hose just yet. Be careful when removing this stuff. It may be old and crackling. Try to spin it around. Again, if you have places where you have oil contamination from the engine, must certainly have a vacuum leak. Start by controlling very well the condition of the pipes, of the hoses. On the fitment, it must be very snug, it cannot rotate. If it rotates, it loses vacuum. Your testing tools must be also very high quality. Now in this way, I want to test my supply of vacuum. And the supply over here, as I turn the engine, must be very fast. As you could saw, very high velocity on the vacuum over there. And now, as I shut off the engine, it should lose the vacuum very fast. If not, it means that we have a clog. So we know now that the vacuum pump is good, the main line is good, this intermediate accessory is good. This is probably not called accessory, but in Portuguese it is, so bear with me. This line over here is good, everything is good until the check valve on the servo, the brake booster, and the brake booster itself, it is too, because on driving it is excellent actually. This over here is a vacuum reservoir, the same as it is on this engine. It is used on multiple multi-jet engines in JTD, just in the different orientation over here, okay? So the pipe that is alone, it is the vacuum that comes from the vacuum pump. So we disconnected this pipe over there, and now we want to test the length of this pipe. So we want to disconnect it over there, and it is not very easy because sometimes it breaks inside of there, and we want to see if we have 0.9 negative over there. If so, we want to check on these two exits. So this exit here supplies this solenoid for the smooth shut-off of the engine, and this one over here for the turbo. This one over here failed over there, very easy to understand. But this one over here only had the fail on the turbo side. This one was working correctly. But what I mean is, if you have 0.9 on the tip of this hose, you must have 0.9 over there. So we may disconnect over here, for example, to check it, and we must have 0.9 over there. If we do not have there or there, we have a problem with this box. If we do not have there and we have there, we have a problem on this box. If we and vice versa, we have a problem with this box. Never saw it, but it appears to be the case on this one because I cannot see any tears on the pipes, at least at the first glance. But let's take one step at a time, okay? Just want you to understand how it works. So entry 0.9, exit 0.9, exit 0.9. Over here, once we have the command for the ECU, we will have a smooth shutoff. And over here, it goes to that solenoid that controls the turbo, okay? On this case, on the 147 NGT, it is near, or it is attached to the air filter box down there, okay? So the pipe is this one over here. So this is the pipe over here, the hose. The consistency of this little rubber part over here is very spongy, which means that with the vacuum it can collapse and do this exact problem. Let's try to remove it. Already seen it happen. It happens a lot on the old BMW diesel engines. The collapsing of the hoses. With time they go very, very, very spongy and they collapse. I don't want to destroy it because I do not want to lose my chance of troubleshooting. Seems very odd. Maybe collapsed. I can check out maybe visually with the engine on. Possibly. I can also remove this altogether and see here on the bench. Yes, I can. So I had to take out here this vacuum reservoir out. It's much easier, just two nuts over there. This one is broken, and guess why it is broken? Because of the vibrations. Okay, so now I tested the line that goes from the main hose to that one over there, and it goes perfectly, despite the fact that it's very spongy. It does have vacuum, so the problem is not there, at least the problem that we are looking for. So now we are going to test, maybe this vacuum reservoir is broken because of the vibrations. I will test this vacuum reservoir on the bench. Much easier to do, okay? Because I have a vacuum gun. So my gun now will be my vacuum pump, and I will pump out all of the air of the inside of the box, and I will close here the exits and see what I have here. It takes a while to take out all of the air. You can also test your brake pusher like this. So I can do it more, but I'm starting to lose strength on the arm. So just like wait. And I have no leaks on the box, and it is not clogged. Imagine that. Now I can take out one of the two fingers to test each one of the lines and do it again with the other one. So firstly the left one. No clogs. The right one. Now what to do next? I want to put here the vacuum pump of the car, and I will test here on the gauge if I have vacuum. I have to cover one of the holes. Takes a while to take out all of the vacuum, of course. Now the other one. Again, takes a while to take out all of the vacuum. In the meantime, I lost track of this, certainly. It's perfect. If you are hearing a clicking noise, it's the alternator pulley giving away. I have to tell the customer about this. It was not noticeable because the noise of the gearbox was so loud, nothing else was audible. So over here, somewhere along the way, I lost track of the fault because, well, everything is functional now. Well, not everything. You have to see everything assembled to see if you still have the same symptoms. But I'm thinking here, maybe along the way, something was not good, and with fiddling with that, I solved it. This pipe is really giving away. Really. Possibly the problem is over here. Vacuum issues are really just like this. You can spend hours and hours trying to find a crack on a pipe, something very minute. It seems very minute, and then you charge whatever you have to charge for your labor, and just for a little bit of hose that is broken. But it's just the process of it, okay? So I give it a little time to charge up the vacuum reservoir, and still nothing happens. It's very odd. Very odd. Let me see there the line that goes to the turbo. If I have the 09. This one I showed you on the other 147 of the remap. So for the turbo I already have it. So I may have another problem altogether. Let's see if now the VGT works. Wait a minute. Gotcha. These ones, oh, I love these ones. I have here the pipe that supplies the solenoid for the turbo. I am testing here this line that goes directly to the solenoid and appears to be holding up very well. Okay, and also you can see now that this smooth shutoff is starting to work. Now what this means is, as I told you so many times on the channel, as you have a vacuum leak somewhere, all of the system is affected by it. I certainly have a problem on the turbo solenoid, on the variable geometry, and it's making me lose all of the vacuum, and in that way I cannot control the other function, which is the smooth shutoff of the engine. As soon as I plugged up, because this gauge also acts as a plug, okay, as soon as I plugged up this line, the system now can work entirely. So now I finally found the issue. The problem is within. I still have to test the line that goes to the geometry itself, but the problem appears to be on the solenoid that controls the turbo. Okay, and now I have to purchase only one part, not 20. Okay, one more thing that you can do is, if you have the certainty of this diagnosis, of this troubleshooting, if you have a new solenoid valve for the turbo or whatever function you may have, if it is bad from factory, believe me, it happens a lot, but I deal with hundreds of cars, okay? It happens a lot. You now have the confidence to say to your supplier, I have to do a warranty on this electro valve, on this solenoid valve. because it does not work correctly. And it may ask you with what proof, and you can say with this proof over here. I checked this, I checked that, I checked all of the systems, the values are this, this and that, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the problem is on there, okay? Found it! So, here you have it. A solenoid valve. This controls the position of the turbo. Now, if this solenoid controls the position of the turbo, I may have a problem with power. Yes, absolutely, yes. But remember that the car was with that problem on the gearbox, so no one drove the car fast enough to feel a problem with power. I do not want to put all of this weight on the customer because it just bought the car. He never drove the car at all, and it was just me doing here some simple driving with the car, but with the gearbox on that condition, it was not possible to really pull on the car. It is an 8-valve engine, so it has a natural good response on low RPM, but eventually it will be very much more powerful now that the problem is solved. About this solenoid valve over here, this is a Gearbox one, it is an original, okay, so we have to say it did this job. The price on this, what do you imagine the price is on the aftermarket one, the Gearbox one original but aftermarket? Around 100 euros, it will be the price on this, around, okay? It is not cheap. It is really actually a little bit expensive. And what is the cost of the flywheel? Around 500 euros, 600, 700, depends where you buy it. The clutch kit, another 200-300. A used gearbox or rebuilt one, another 200-300, 400, 500 euros. All of the labor involved on this. It is expensive, do you think? All of this, of course, the previous person, the previous owner, drove the car too much on these conditions, leading to these consequences, okay? We are dealing here with consequences. This is the cause, and the consequences were the gearbox and the flywheel and the clutch kit and all of that stuff, okay? To resume, if you have an issue with something on your car, please do a diagnosis, do a troubleshooting to understand if that little problem that you have on your car will not lead to a much bigger problem. So here on our board, we have here, as you can see, everything we checked in blue marks. Everything is great until we get to here. Now what happened here was a total failure on the inside of the solenoid, which created a vacuum leak. All of the air of the atmosphere will enter through here and take out all of the power of the vacuum. The vacuum is very weak. You can very easily take out the vacuum with a problem on a hose, a pipe, anything can take out the power of the vacuum. So this solenoid over here did just that. With that vacuum off, now we have here very close to 0 bar, we do not have enough vacuum to operate the solenoid that controls the intake valve. And that's it, okay? As you have here the check valve on the entry of the reservoir, you have vacuum for the servo, for the brake booster, sorry, in Portuguese is servo, or brake servo, okay? And as you have that check valve over there, you lose all of the ability to do the rest, okay? So that is it. Now, just one more thing here on this solenoid. I didn't tell you before. This solenoid here, I have, several of my Portuguese friends and followers of the channel sometimes do donations, send me by mail, or come here to do some work and do some donations, not only money, but money for the channel, okay, but also some parts. And the part that I use for this car, it is a similar solenoid valve that not only doubled my guarantee that the work is well done, it is working very, very well, but also allows me to keep that solenoid there, and it will be free for this customer. That solenoid valve will be free for the customer. Compliments here of the channel. I just will charge for a little bit of the time that took to do all of this work. Obviously, I will not charge the time to do the recordings, obviously not. I just do 2 hours of charging time of doing the troubleshooting and the replacement of the solenoid valve, okay? I was a little bit in doubt how to do this thumbnail because, well, I wanted to explain this, but I wanted to you to understand the consequences. I know that this video is not very related to the gearbox itself, but I wanted to understand the consequences of these issues, okay? So if you want to know more about how to remove the gearbox, how to do all of that stuff with the clutch assembly, how to take out the push bearing, slave cylinders, master ones, all of the bleeding, all of that stuff, it is down on the description. I don't want to mislead you with my thumbnails. Please, if you want to have something to say about that or any other thing, down on the comments, I will be available, okay? So that is that, okay? Again, down on the description, you have a lot more that can and will be useful for you regarding most of the areas of the car, of most cars for that matter. And also I have links for helps for the channel if you are able to do so. I see you next time, guys. Bye.